Divorce lawyers of Reddit, what client of yours was so bad that you personally hoped they wouldn't get anything in a settlement?
Client got caught cheating on his wife, wanted a divorce but didn't have the balls to tell her so and asked me to inform her he was filing for divorce 2 days after she had his child. Good lord man, what a complete and utter coward. Having a kid is hard. I try not to judge people who split not too long after having a kid, because it really does surface things about a significant other that you wouldn't find out unless you had a kid, and I don't think a miserable couple is good for a kid necessarily. But I'm talking about after a couple of years of trying to see if you can make it work and working on your relationship. How are you going to skate 2 days after the baby is born? A relative of mine had her first baby young, but they were married. But when the husband heard she was in labor, he went out partying with buddies and they couldn't find him for days. It was a home birth and her parents helped her deliver the kid and recover. He just disappeared not long after. I have a cousin that was a divorce lawyer and she always said, crime law is the worst people on their best behavior and divorce law is good people on their worst behavior. OMG, this hits home. My divorce is finalized and I thank God every day because my ex has fallen off the deep end and even denies things that are in our decree on file with the court. I can't believe the person he's turned into. I checked out years ago, so I've moved far beyond an emotional response. I am just hoping he gets there someday too. I'd hate to live in his head day in and out right now. My dad is like this to this day. 28 years later and he is still miserable as can be because my mom divorced him. Not that he really loved my mom, but he came from a very conservative family and having a son out of wedlock and being divorced were seen as very bad. That's just so sad. I sure hope that isn't my ex. I'm not looking forward to another decade of co-parenting. My ex was very possessive and has a really hard time understanding the only control he has now is in our decree. My ex was very possessive and has a really hard time understanding the only control he has now is in our decree. For what it's worth, my dad never even got over that part. He is currently using COVID-19 as a reason to not have my half-sister go over to her mom's house as he enjoys trying to micromanaging our lives too much. My dad is like this. Still goes on about how they're married in God's eyes even though they had a courthouse wedding. Oh geesh, I am sorry to hear that. My dad's problem isn't so much that they are not together per se. But he does wish he had more control over my life, and being together with my mom would have been a way to achieve that. I don't know how to explain it, but he has some weird mental issues and/or mindset that make him very controlling, and I think he sees his children as possessions more than anything else. I'm just glad I only had to put up with him every other weekend. But my half-sister is currently living with him. The only good thing about being divorced is not having to argue anymore. I remember the day I realized that his trying to push my buttons wasn't working anymore. He could stand in the driveway screaming abuse at me and I could just close the door and refuse to engage. That was a great day. You're lucky. Mine still controlled me. I've been thinking about you today and hoping that you are okay. An important lesson I learned at that point in my life was that I can't control what he does or says, but I can control how I react to it. What he does is not your fault or your responsibility any more than it would be if he was a total stranger. Just take all that guilt and fear and insecurity and throw it away. It serves no purpose anymore. But what you do is up to you, and you alone. It's a little scary, but you can do it. Picture where you want to be a year from now and make that happen. Thanks for the follow-up. It's over now. Haven't had contact with her in a few years. Yes, her. Women can do this too. Unfortunately, with no contact comes no contact with my children. Despite court orders, she has a way with everything me-related. I did have a case where my client fought really hard for the dog, and then ended up turning him over to a shelter. Fucking asshole. The ex-wife received an anonymous tip and was able to get him back quickly. Other than that, it isn't usually a client that's bad. Also, if they are, you can just fire them. Typically it's the opposing counsel, self-represented opposing party that's awful. This happened to my cousin. Her ex fought and fought for the dog only to turn it into a high-kill shelter. The dog was euthanized before my cousin knew he was in there. It really messed her up. That's awful. I tell clients who are probably going to have to give up a pet to draft some language in the MSA that specifically states that in the event the opposing party can no longer care for the dog, doesn't want it, etc., my client must be notified in writing of their intent and give client first right of refusal. Not complying comes with serious consequences. You can actually go to jail for it. Unfortunately, it was a broken engagement, not a divorce. That is great advice though. This is true for any big thing you give up or donate. For example, let's say you donate a big chunk of family land to the state to become a nature preserve or something. There should definitely be language in the contract that states if for any reason the state can no longer care for it, they can't sell it and it reverts back to family ownership. Conversely, I've heard of pet custody fights that were more vicious than those involving children, and not just because of divorce. The death of a pet owner can also do this to people. I was going to say that since pets are the fur babies to many people, it would appear the bad actors have merely transferred the behavior of treating their children like pawns to their poor pets in the divorce. I need to amend my will anyway, and one of the changes will be switching custody of my cat, should it outlive me, from my parents to my brother. Plus, neither cat in the original will is still alive. Smart. I'm going to try to make my African gray parrot the beneficiary of my life insurance policy, if I can, or try to set up a trust in his name. Then I will make access to his money contingent on providing a certain level of care by the human who chooses to take him on. I also made sure to sign and keep an original adoption contract with his previous human, so I am definitely his legal caretaker. No one can take him from me. Smiley face. I wasn't the lawyer. My close family member was. The couple had 2 kids. One healthy, one severely disabled. Like 24-hour daycare. More surgeries than birthdays. Will never have a normal life. Might maybe possibly learn to speak a word or two eventually. Will never be out of diapers. Client's idea of the divorce was that his soon-to-be ex-wife would take the disabled kid and move out of the house. He would keep the house and the healthy kid, and his girlfriend would move in. He would contribute nothing to the ex-wife, and nothing toward the care of the disabled kid, for the rest of his life. They would just evaporate. The judge was not impressed. She got everything the judge could possibly give her. The house, the nicer car, both kids, alimony and the maximum child support allowed by law. I think the judge would have turned the guy over his knee and spanked him if it had been possible. I wonder how they would feel if they did have a normal kid, who wasn't interested in playing baseball. This happened to my neighbors. Awful situation. The mother thankfully got everything she and her son deserved. I grew up with 2 autistic and disabled siblings, but my parents handle it stronger together. People would be floored at how many parents will straight up try to walk out on their disabled child. It really skews to one side. It's fairly rare that a case even gets to court. Most people understand that it's worth it to make a deal they're not entirely happy with if it involves their children than to leave it in the hands of a stranger. The judge doesn't know you and can't care about you any more than they can care about the rest of their cases. Especially when their child's situation is complicated. If you spent 10 years educated yourself about your kid's medical and developmental needs, you aren't going to want some stranger to figure it out in 6 hours. So you get a set of people with usually borderline or full-blown narcissism. They just go to court more generally anyway. In this situation you need someone with very little self-awareness. In this instance it tends to be more likely to be the father, I think mostly of societal expectations. A female narcissist is more likely to fight for the child to exhibit how wonderful and perfect a mother she is and how persecuted she is by her ex. But occasionally you'll get the reversed situation. As the mother of a severely autistic kid, nonverbal, severe sensory issues, the works except for intellectual delay. This makes me rage. / As much as my kid can be a handful, she's also an awesome person that makes me laugh on a daily with her crazy cheeky sense of humor and loves nothing better than to play with her little sister. I'll take that over a normal kid that can play baseball any day. Dad was a lawyer. Growing up we had guns in the house, and when we were old enough we were taught where they were and how to use them responsibly. / Not because of the criminal cases. No, it was because of the divorces. I had friends who had to be pulled from school because an angry dad told their lawyer dad he was going to go to the school and kill lawyer dad's kids. / When we were little we had to change babysitter daycare once because the owner's son was on the losing side of a case my dad won. In high school I had a girl ghost me after things had been going really well. Turns out my dad represented a family friend when he divorced the girl's two-timing mom 18 years prior, and mom refused to let her daughter date me because she was still salty about being taken to the cleaners. / Divorce makes people crazy. My friend in high school had to have their house assessed, and they ended up removing some bushes that disgruntled family law clients might use to hide and ambush her dad, a family law attorney. Happened in my family, and thinking about it makes me see how now why my aunts and uncles turned out the way they were. My grandmother left her first husband and he was very angry. To be fair, she did him dirty by getting pregnant by another man while he was on away duty. He came to the old family home one day and told the kids to come outside. They all refused and he kept trying to get into the door. He left, and as he was leaving they could see he had a gun tucked behind his back. He was planning on killing my grandmother and wanted the kids out of the house. Divorce is such a nasty thing. There were only 4 times I ever felt in danger. / In elementary school my dad moved in above his office after his own divorce. One night I went downstairs to the office part to get some paper and pens. He told me not to ever do that after dark on the weekends. There were a couple of bars across the street frequented by people who thought he'd done them wrong, and he didn't want them trying to break in if they saw one of his kids. In middle school he had someone try to break into a house he was renting. The guy broke through a door window and was trying to unlock the door when he was met with a pistol in his face and my dad telling him he was about to have a really bad night if he kept coming in. In high school there was a night where my dad sent a friend and I away because someone had threatened to come kill him at his house that night. He stayed up all night house with his guns at the ready, but nothing happened. Either way, he didn't want me and a friend around if it turned out to be more than an empty threat. In college I lived with my dad. Woke up one morning to find my laptop gone along with some other valuables and a car in the driveway. I grabbed the shotgun and stood at the edge of our driveway while one of his former clients got the message and returned everything through the dog door. / He always kept a pistol in his desk drawer at his office and a shotgun ready to go at his house just in case. Probably nothing is going to happen, but it's good to be prepared. This thread is making me glad my dad is a fucking teacher, lol. Although some kids did bash in our mailbox once. He's kind of an asshole. Yeah, no shit. My dad did classified work in aerospace software. My brother and I always thought it was kind of cool that he was so elusive about work. Cryptic things like, dealing with the Chinese this month. And he meant literally, the country of China was his client. But man, we were never worried like this stuff. Your first story reminds me of my dad. He is a CPS worker and there were a couple of bars next to each other he and his coworkers had to avoid because that's where people who get their kid taken would congregate. / Then one day a new CPS worker was hired who was a 6 feet 6 inches and fresh out of the Marines. They specifically took him out to those bars knowing the patrons wouldn't try messing with him. Exactly. I was chatting with my non-divorce attorney and asked him why divorce attorneys cost so much. He explained it's because of the danger involved. His friend was killed by a losing ex and another seriously injured. / People in estate cases can be crazy too. My wills and estates professor got out of practicing but still teaches. He said his last straw was the family going to trial over a garden hose and a Rubbermaid trash can. Actually, she was afraid I'd air her dirty laundry. She hadn't told her younger children they were born out of wedlock and the product of an affair. I didn't know that, but she thought I did. Not a good look for a fine upstanding Christian holy roller. Ironically, I did learn the whole story when I told the story to the family friend's brother who was like an uncle to me growing up. He laughed his ass off and spilled the tea. I had fun giving the lady big knowing grins at school events for the rest of the year and watching her sweat, though I didn't ever say anything. Divorce makes people crazy. They really do. I'm a receptionist at a law firm that deals with divorces. Man, the shit I hear or have to deal with is unreal. Like this one time. This one woman came in to have a consult with a divorce lawyer because her ex slapped her with the "I'm leaving you, get a lawyer" line. When she came in, I needed her to fill out some basic info forms and she was not happy about that, let alone being there in general. And she pretty much took all her anger out on me in front of a waiting room full of people while filling out these forms. It was beyond uncomfortable for me since I had no idea what to say to this woman as she flipped shit on me for her husband leaving her for someone else. Her attitude with me got so bad I almost told her to learn to change her tone of voice when speaking to me, as I am not responsible for her husband leaving her. I had the luxury of working for my dad in college, so I could shut people down when they were being rude. It was always fun to see the look of dawning realization when they were laying into me or the other secretary and then realized I shared a last name with the lawyer when they asked my name to report me. My high school government history teacher became a lawyer. He took online classes and told us what he was learning. It was this really interesting experience because he graduated and took the bar my senior year. My whole class had him for freshman and senior history classes, so we got to be there for the beginning and end of him moving into his law career. They even shouted him out at our graduation ceremony. He got his own firm and practiced family law. He was a good man and it felt like my whole high school was proud of him. A few years back, a client's ex-husband cornered and murdered him in his office before driving home to take his own life. I still don't know how to process it. He spent his whole adult life working towards that practice and that man just took it away. I have an incredible level of respect for anyone risking their lives to practice their passion. Rest in peace, Mr. M. You were a good man. Started at a threshold firm and did family, criminal and civil my first few years. Thankfully now I do exclusively large civil cases and don't meddle with the rest. The biggest difference between criminal and family is mentality. Criminals know they fucked up and got caught and now they need you to help them out. They can, usually, be reasoned with. People in family law cases cannot be reasoned with. These are regular people who now have had their whole life flipped upside down and their kids and their money is on the line. All logic goes out the window and they're running just on, sometimes purely illogical, emotion. You can't try to steer them the best you can, but it's like bartending at closing time when you're trying to get the drunkest people to leave on their own. This family law also has a way of affecting every aspect of someone's life who generally hasn't been involved with lawsuits very much in a way that other suits don't. 1 week you have a fairly calm life without a lot of oversight. Next, you have to turn over all your financial statements for the past 3 years. Find a new place to live, start figuring out details of your kids' lives that your co-parent had always taken care of, and at the end of the day get told by your lawyer that it's going to be a lot less painful and expensive if you settle and give all this stuff. They're probably going to get it anyway. To the very person that's caused this huge disruption to your life. I've had cases 90% settled, but when my client or the other party realizes this last part, they blow it up just so we can go to court and end up with the exact same terms several months later. Criminal clients, on the other hand, you give them a plea offer that says, you admit you fucked up, pay a big fine, but you avoid years in prison, and they'll jump at it immediately. It's also one of the few areas of law where there's, usually, no solution that makes it all go away. And so many times you get the clients that spend the first month or so of the process waxing poetic about how this is so unnecessary. Look, dude, We've got no fault divorce here. If your ex wants out, she gets out. She's essentially suing you to do so. So put your dukes up. Get me your disclosures and tell me what you want out of this, because half participating in these proceedings in some hopeless plea to get your ex back is only gonna make both of us look like fools.